Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is the second video I've done on a 2024 Suzuki. The last one I just did, I actually filmed today. I don't usually do two videos in one day, but I filmed the 2024 Hayabusa 25th Anniversary Edition, which is the complete opposite of this bike, and I actually might be a little bit more excited to review this bike. This is the Suzuki DR650S. It's a dual sport bike, and I think if you're on the fence about an adventure bike, you kind of think you might want one, buy this instead. And more importantly, for the price of an adventure bike, buy this and the road bike you actually want, and you'll probably be in the same price as an adventure bike, and I think you'll have more fun. So in this video review, I'm gonna go through what this bike is in detail, and you'll probably be surprised at what it is because most people just kind of ignore this bike in any kind of video review because it's just so basic and old. But I think there's some real charm to this bike and some real advantages to a simple design that we're gonna talk about. So again, I'm excited to review this bike because there's a lot of coolness here that I don't think shows up on the spec sheet, and that's what we're gonna go through. So first thing first, if you have any questions about this bike or anything in the Suzuki lineup, Yamaha lineup, KTM lineup, all of that and more, I'm filming here at McLean Sports, and they give me complete access to their entire vehicle lineup, even a very rare 25 in the country, brand new 25th anniversary Hayabusa. They give me access to that, and I can come back to that. I can also come back to this and continue on with more and more reviews to make sure that you get the information you need. So do me a favor, hit subscribe. Let me know in the comments below what I don't cover in this that you want to know about it, and I'll cover it. And again, we're going to cover everything 2024 here. And if you want another brand, we also cover that on this channel as too. Check out the channel. We got pretty much every brand covered. I'm still working on one. So every brand of motorcycle. So thanks for subscription. Do me a favor, click that, like a video. Let's get going with this review. All right, so let's cover my controversial statement of buy the dual sport instead of the adventure bike. Let's talk about what I'm talking about there, because I do think there is a market of adventure bike people that think I'm crazy, and that's probably time for you to tune out of this video. You know, there's a whole bunch of great reasons to buy an adventure bike, but for a lot of us, if you've been riding a lot of street bikes and maybe the odd dirt bike when you were a kid or just occasionally on the side, this is an option for you to consider to see how much you like dirt riding. Because one thing to remember with an adventure bike is adventure bikes are heavy, and they're great long distance tourers on the road, but they're kind of compromised long distance tourers on the road because they have to give you some off-road ability. And my theory is that a lot of people buying adventure bikes are probably too afraid or not skilled enough to take them as far off-road as they think they would want to, and I'm including myself in there, and that's where this bike comes in. You can adventure on a dual sport bike, but more importantly, you can kind of discover the whole world of off-roading on a larger dirt bike through this around near where you live. You may not tour as far, but I would argue that many people have toured on stuff like this. And although this one seems old for 2024 standards, a lot of us grew up with bikes like this that we would go long distances on, and they were perfectly fine. So we're going to talk about the joy of motorcycling. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of things, and we're going to talk about what makes this bike specifically a very good alternative to get used to a bigger bike off-road, to see if you want to do the full adventure bike, or to see if this just fills your need for the off-road exploring that you want to do, and then maybe a second bike in the garage for pure street use, for longer distance travel, for whatever you want, sport bike, whatever you want. All right, let's start with the review of this one. We'll start at the front wheel and work our way back, and we're gonna talk about the tech in this, or lack of tech as well. All right, let's start with the front wheel. The reason I start with the front wheel is you can always tell the intent of the manufacturer with this design by how they equip it. So first of all, let's just talk the basics. This is still an off-road capable bike, but different than a dirt bike, these are road legal tires. That's one thing that sometimes people forget. It's not just a dirt bike with lights. They have to have different tires for the road that are certified for the road, and this has that. And some of the things they do is they sacrifice a little bit of mud traction and off-road traction for a better curvature around the wheel, which gives you better on-road handling. So these are called the trail wings. There's nothing fancy about these tires. They're fairly cheap to upgrade if it's not what you want, but they're pretty good on the road with their overall shape and curvature, and they're pretty good for the typical kind of off-roading that you're going to find, you know, gravel roads, dirt roads, really rough roads, that kind of thing. They do a good job of that. And you have a 21-inch front wheel and a 17-inch rear wheel. So you've got that oversized diameter front wheel that you would have on a typical dirt bike, a typical adventure bike, and that allows you to kind of have the angle you would need to approach the same things as you would on a full-size adventure bike. Now, there is a lot of simplicity to this bike. This bike is not expensive. In fact, it's $100 less as a 650cc than Suzuki's own 400cc dual sport, which we will talk about in another video as well. If you want to see that, no problem, we'll do that. You have a single disc brake here, so you have modern braking in that it's a disc, but it's not heavy duty, it's not crazy. And again, for what you're probably gonna be doing with this bike, it's not all that heavy, you're not gonna be going all that fast. It's all you really need. And again, simplicity is the key. Less things to break, less things to mess up. If you were to drop it or something like that, you haven't got a whole lot of expensive parts and, you know, crazy things there. No ABS, none of that. You also have typical forks here, and what I love is this is what they always used to do to protect your fork seals. They used to keep all the bugs and the dirt and the gravel from building up on the front of your forks, and that would keep your fork seals intact. It's a simple thing that nowadays is considered maybe a little bit ugly, but they worked. They were effective. And when I grew up, this is how dirt bikes were equipped, and it worked very well. So you have some simplicity here. When these break, you can replace them. It's not a big deal. So yeah, easy to replace stuff if you have issues with not just falling, but let's say hitting a sharp stick or something like that when you're heading on a tighter trail. So you have those options. So both as an on-road and off-road bike, pretty decent stuff here if you have your expectations in line. All right, looking at the heart of this bike, you're gonna see sort of a radiator type thing right here. You're gonna see air cooling right here. So what's going on? Well, this is an air oil cooled bike. What that means is there's a little bit of liquid cooling of sorts and air cooling. What it really means is simplicity. This is not something designed to give you maximum power where you have a proper cooling system that allows you for, maybe higher compression ratios or higher heat and that kind of thing. This is a simple bike that doesn't run all out all the time, and it can't be that because it is just basically air oil cooled. So what that means is you're never putting this bike under really high stress, even when you're revving it out a little bit. So no real issues with driving this kind of all day in regular kind of riding. Very simple. Again, simple can be inexpensive, and that's also reliable. What it does do is give you enough power to go out on the roads, out on the highways, and head out on the trails. It's got good torque being a single cylinder. Single cylinder engines are known for their low end torque and not a ton of horsepower. So that's really what this is. Simple low end torque, enough horsepower to keep you going. But again, it can take you out on the highway, but it's designed for those backcountry roads and allowing you to explore anywhere. Dirt roads, bumpy roads, gravel roads, whatever it is, engine's gonna suit you well. The other thing you should point out, or I should point out here, is a pretty simple frame design. This is how they designed bikes in the 80s and before, and simple square tubing, round tubing, nothing, no style points in there at all. It's just very simply a very basic design. Now what you do have is some nice things in the rear suspension. So you can kind of see right over here, that is a reservoir for your suspension, which means it's a piggyback shop, it's adjustable. So you have some adjustable suspension in here, which is not something you would expect on a bike of this price class. You got some preload adjustment, other adjustment. And again, that piggyback shock, what it does is it takes the oil in the shock that can get hot through a lot of compression, in and out the same way. It puts it here and allows you to have consistent rear suspension performance. And it's a fairly modern design with moving all that weight forward. So the weight is centralized and fairly low. And you've got a decent rear shock design there as well, which is something that's worth pointing out because again, it helps ride well. All right, if you made it this far in the video, you're with me on the concept that maybe a dual sport bike is an option instead of an adventure bike. Now you can see over on the far side of the picture there, the exhaust is up high. That's typical dirt bike, adventure bike type stuff. So that's good stuff. What I think is interesting here is you're gonna have to make a decision. Can you handle a bike that is not built around style, that's built around function? So when we talk about that, I'm pretty sure this exact lens here was used in the 1980s, maybe the 70s. These square signal lights, same thing. These aren't fancy LED lights that do anything crazy. These are simple stuff. Now again, if you drop this bike, if you have an issue, if you crack any of these, they're cheap to replace. That's another key piece of this bike. What else is cool is down here, this little compartment here is a little space for your toolkit, but there's extra room in there. You can stick stuff in there, and it's just a simple rubbery type container that has apparently some Armor All or something on it, so my hands are a little greasy right now. But it's kind of a cool spot. That's just how we used to carry stuff on bikes. So just a simple, practical thing that really keeps it your stuff in there, and it's going to keep it relatively dry. You'll also notice as we zoom in, let's just do that right quick, is there's a helmet lock right there, which again, if you're going to go touring anywhere and you want to put a helmet on the bike or lock a helmet to the bike, you can lock your D-ring of your helmet right on there with a key. You don't see that on a whole lot of more modern bikes, but you do see it here. And again, it just gives you options. Now let's zoom back out again and look at one more thing. You've got little handles here. Now that looks like handles for the rear seat. Let's get a little different angle and let's talk about why they're important. All right, so looking at these handles from a different angle, you can see that they're not really for the rear seat, but they could be. This is a bike that's capable of taking 2 people, but the seat doesn't run all the way back, but you have these handles. So while you can have your rear seat passenger hold the handles behind them, that's one option. What I like about these is you don't need to buy fancy custom luggage or anything else like that. You can strap stuff on here. You've got the plastic bars here on the, I call them bars, but plastic segments here that kind of level out this area, and they're fairly level to the seat. You could stick a duffel bag on here easily and strap it on with bungee cords or zip or like, you know, gear tie type things, whatever you want to do. You can strap your luggage on there so you can easily go away for a weekend on this, taking the bare necessities. You might not go on a full camping adventure just strapping that on like I said, but you can get accessories on this, and you can see how they're bolted in here. You could get bags, I'm sure, in the aftermarket that could allow you to have side bags, but just even as is, strap up a duffel bag on, decide you're going to go to Subway for dinner kind of thing, and maybe Tim Hortons for lunch and breakfast, and you've got the ability to take all the clothes you need, but maybe not all the food you need on a cool motorcycle vacation right here. All right, while we're looking at this, that square mirror there, you don't see them anymore either. Why is it there? Because it's cheap. If you drop this bike, it's a cheap mirror to replace. But let's look on a little further and look a little closer at the handlebars here, because there's a few things you also don't see every day. Let's zoom right in there. You see that on the right there, to the right of your headlight switch? That's a choke. Don't see that much in a fuel injected bike anymore, but this isn't fuel injected, so you still have an old-fashioned bike. Again, super reliable, super easy to deal with. You know, not super common anymore, but you have it. Headlight switch looks chintzy, feels pretty solid. Again, just like the old 80s styles bikes, signal switch, again, feels just fine. Horn switch, again, looks different, feels great. So even the grips here, I think my BMX bike from the 80s had a grip similar to this. All of these are totally functional. These aren't going to be super comfortable in just your hand, but they're going to be very grippy with a glove on, and if you have a glove on, you're going to have good grip on there, and that's all practical. And then again, you have that shield out in front, which again, a good adventure bike will give you, but this also comes on the dual sport bike. Clutch lever is a little heavy, there's no assistance there, but it's totally fine. But this shield not only protects you from the gravel that might be shot up from other cars on the gravel road or other bikes or whatever you're with, it also gives you a little bit of extra wind protection on your hands, which allows you to stay a little warmer if you get into cooler weather and you drive a little bit later in the season. And on a bike like this, it's the kind of thing that you're not going to be driving crazy fast anyway, so when it does get cooler, your wind chill effect isn't as big of a deal. Now we're going to move over to here. Normally I would make a cut, but I want to go past the dash for a second and come down here to, yeah, that's your fuel cap. Again, retro, retro, retro. Cheap, easy, simple. Let's go back up to the dash. All right, let's just zoom into a new angle here and keep going from here. All right, before I show you the speedometer area, or the gauge, not gauges, I do want to show you how we used to ride and how things used to work, and it was just completely effective. Turn the key on, there's your neutral light, it's green. Check out your signal lights, they're slightly different green, and I don't know if you'll see your high beam light because the high beam light is intentionally dim. There, you can go see a little bit. It's intentionally dim because you only need that when it's actually dark outside. You don't need to be reminded of it. So there is your little gauge cluster over on the right side, and your actual speedometer is over here, and that's all you need on a bike like this. Remember, it makes torque down low, so you're not running it to rev line. The power drops off on the rev range before you're at red line, so you're gonna know when to shift without redlining this bike. Does it go fast enough for the highway? Yes, it does. Do you need anything more than this? Not really. Is it kind of cool to see dial style gauges instead of a digital display in 2024? Yes, this is a 2024 bike. I think it's cool. Again, everything's simple and cheap. Now let's talk about this versus an adventure bike. All right, this is where we're just gonna get brutally honest. If you've made it this far in the video, the reason you don't want an adventure bike is because you can't afford the bike you want. Now, that's okay. I think there's still a case for these. The reason this is less expensive and the parts are less expensive to replace if you drop it or break it or something like that is because that works. When I grew up in the 80s, bikes looked like this. And in that 70s, 80s time span is when a lot of these Japanese manufacturers really still had some growth in their product line, because people like me would get on a bike like this and just enjoy it. And if that's what you want to do, is just really enjoy motorcycling without the stresses of crazy technology or crazy expensive stuff, this can actually do that for you. This thing will take you as far off-road as any adventure bike. Your skill is your limit, not the bike. Sure, it's nice to have some of the adventure bike niceties on a long touring trip, but you can save yourself a lot of money by getting a pretty good bike, new or used, to do your street travel and allow this to do your all-road travel and get the same enjoyment. Because to me, motorcycling isn't really about the bikes. You buy what you like because you like it, but really you want to go for the ride. You know, you don't talk with your buddies about, wow, check out my single cylinder, 4-cylinder, whatever it is. You talk about where you went and what you did, and this thing will get you there and allow you to have that great time as well. And that's why I think dual sports are not dead. They should still be considered, and especially since if you're the kind of person that wants to go a little further off-road, a little further down that rough road, that kind of thing, doesn't like the idea of a really heavy adventure bike but wants to go explore stuff, a dual sport bike is for you. Yes, it's simple. Yes, it doesn't have the technology, but the best part is you can buy this for a pretty inexpensive price new. They hold their value well. And you know, like a regular adventure bike is going to lose the entire value of this bike in its first couple years, whereas this thing you're still going to be able to sell 20 years from now for half of what you bought it for brand new, because they just work. So there's my case for buying an adventure or a dual sport instead of an adventure bike. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not. I'll tell you what I did. For me, I wanted to go a little bit more off-roading, so I bought, and it's on this channel, and I bought it from McLean's, a Sur-Ron Ultra B. It's an electric dirt bike. Yeah, I know, weird, totally different, but the point is I got my off-road fill through that, and I've got a great on-road bike as well. It's an option. It's something that gives me the enjoyment that I want, and this may give you the enjoyment that you want. So don't tune it out because it hasn't got the technology or even a tachometer. Tune it out if it's not for you, but tune it in if it's the right bike to give you the adventures you want, and I think you may be surprised that this may do that. There's other bikes in the lineup. I want to thank McLean Sports for giving me complete access to their entire vehicle lineup. We're going to talk about the 400cc Suzuki dual sport bike as well. We're going to talk about everything in the lineup, all on this channel. Do me a favor, hit subscribe, like the video, help me grow this channel out, because the more you do that, the more I get to go to dealers and say, see, we're growing. Let's do more and more videos with you guys, and we'll get more and more videos for you guys. Thanks everybody for watching. Again, please subscribe. We'll talk to you in the next one.